And Canadians are in a real bind because, for 175 years, it was okay in Canada to basically put trust in the public institutions, educational institutions and professional colleges, and even the political parties. You knew what they stood for, and generally they played the game straight. And that's flipped completely upside down in the last 7 years. And that's a terrible, bitter pill for Canadians to swallow. And most of them don't even know it's happened because their primary sources of news, like CBC, is completely corrupted by its $1.4 billion a year payoff from the federal government. CTV isn't much better. Most ordinary people have no idea where to get news. And so they're faced with this terrible conundrum, which is, well, either things have gone badly sideways, especially toward the left in Canada, or the people complaining, like me, let's say, or the truckers for that matter, are misogynist, racist, alt-right-wing, Confederate, Nazi bigots. And it's a hell of a lot easier to buy the latter than the former, and no wonder. But the unfortunate truth is, well, people can decide that for themselves. We'll walk through this again. I retweeted Pierre Poilievre. He's the leader of the opposition in Canada. And because of that, I'm being investigated by my regulatory body. My public reputation is at stake, and I may no longer be able to practice or describe myself as a clinical psychologist. And that's how it is. And it isn't just Poilievre. It's also the fact that I criticized Trudeau, and I criticized an Ottawa city councillor, and I made a joke at Jacinda Ardern. And it's not just fluke that every single one of them is on the left. And that's how we are in Canada. And it's not like I don't have some sympathy for the left. I like Russell Brand. Brand does what he can to stand up for working class types against corporate overreach and corporate government collusion to produce a kind of fascist, oppressive fascist overreach in relationship to the working class. And I understand perfectly well that there's a need for a left-wing political voice to stand for the working class, and especially perhaps against the depredations of monopolistic capitalists. But that isn't what's happening on the left in relationship to the sorts of things we're talking about in the least. And it's going to be very hard for Canadians to wake up to this reality. I see no evidence whatsoever that they've woken up yet.
Oh, not at all.
Not at all, no. So we'll see what happens when we make all of this public. The next step for the college is to haul me in front of a disciplinary board and, rake me over the coals personally. And I don't imagine I'll accept their diktats when that happens. I can't imagine any circumstances under which that would occur. And then their next step is to publicly announce my refractory nature. They've already defined me as a repeat offender, by the way, highly likely to reoffend. So the alternative is I'm going to make this public. I've already told them essentially to go to hell, although I did it politely. And now they have to drag me in front of a disciplinary hearing, which I will make unbelievably public. And then because I won't move in that regard, as far as I can tell, I don't see that they have a leg to stand on. Not only am I being accused in the vast majority of the accusations of having unacceptable political beliefs, but half the people who complained claimed they were clients of mine. So procedurally, this is also a nightmare for them, as far as I can tell, because at minimum, they should have inquired in relationship to these claims that the complainants were clients of mine. They should have noted to them that they weren't, and they should have required them to initiate the complaint process without falsehood. And they didn't do any of that repeatedly. And, that's particularly germane because if the complaint is levied by someone who was a client, the college is obligated and also tends to take those complaints much more seriously and to facilitate their movement forward. Mm-hmm. So I think they've demonstrated such a brutal level of incompetence and corruption that I can't see that they have any way forward except to continue to pursue me or to resign en masse. And they're not going to do the latter. one of the things that made me able to do this from the beginning, when the university came after me, was that I had 3 independent streams of income, right? As a professor, I had a clinical practice and I had a pretty successful business. And so I could lose 2 of those, any 2 of those, without, being destitute and putting my family at risk. And I'm still in that position now, which is also partly why I'm willing to do this publicly, because I don't want this precisely to be about me, because that's just annoying. I want to shed light on the fact that this is on my belief that this is a universal problem of public concern in Canada and elsewhere. And I can do that because the worst thing the college can do to me is, the worst thing they can do is suspend my license and make a public statement that because of my refusal to comply with their dictates, I'm no longer acceptable as a licensed clinical psychologist. And I don't want them to do that because I believe that I earned my license and am also a good advocate on the clinical front. I don't want to be in a position where faceless bureaucrats motivated by a political agenda and whatever envy and resentment they carry in their dark and nasty little hearts have the opportunity to strip me of something that I spent a decade of extremely hard work earning.